Did I beat myself up over it? No, absolutely not. I just said, hey, that didn't feel great. Maybe I want to avoid doing that tonight. And that was the end of it. I didn't make it this big dramatic thing or anything like that. I was just like, I had that experience, I learned from it, and now I'm moving on. Welcome to the Biking Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Stacy Smith, and I lost 50 pounds riding my bike by focusing on what my body can do. Now, I teach other women how to do the same. I am obsessed with completely flipping the script on weight loss so that we can work out to feel good and feel strong. If you are ready to stop dieting, learn how to appreciate your body, and have fun riding your bike, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here. And if you're joining us for the first time, welcome to the Biking Wellness community. I am so happy that you found us, and I'm so happy that you're here. This week's episode is one that I feel like we can listen to over and over and over again. I feel like it is especially timely because we're just coming off of the 4th of July weekend if you're listening to this in real time. However, I make sure that all of my podcast episodes have something in them regardless of the time of year for you. So I think that this episode about overeating on the weekends is going to be so useful to you, and I can just see you coming back to this one again and again. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive right in. Today we're talking all about overeating over the weekends. This episode is coming out on a Tuesday. All of my episodes right now, at least, come out on Tuesdays. And there is certainly a possibility that you are reflecting on how you handled your weekend in terms of your bike rides, in terms of your workouts, and possibly in terms of what you ate over the weekend. We like to judge ourselves so hard and so much after a weekend, especially if we feel like we blew it after a really good week, either by having too much to eat or by having too many alcoholic or sugary beverages, or even both. If you find yourself kind of constantly in this cycle of struggling with being so good during the week and blowing it on the weekends, we are going to break down exactly why that happens, and we're going to talk about what to do about it. As I was going into this past weekend, I had not one, not two, but 3 cookouts this weekend. And I will be totally honest with you. I always am. I did not do this perfectly. However, I did go into the weekend with a plan, with an idea of how I was going to handle things. And most importantly, regardless of what worked and what didn't, I didn't beat myself up when it was all over. I'm not going into this week thinking that I need to punish myself and ride my bike a bunch of miles to make up for the food that I ate over the weekend or anything like that. That's just not helpful, and that's just not useful. It doesn't work for me, and it's not going to work for you. So what is weekend overeating, and why is it so common? Well, first of all, weekends are just kind of our free time for many of us. Weekdays tend to be much more structured, whether we work or even if we don't. My mother is retired, and I swear to goodness, she is probably busier now that she is retired than she ever was when she was working a full-time job. So, what I'm trying to say here is that the schedule tends to be different for us from the weekend to the weekday. And when the weekend comes, for many of us, we're tired, we're exhausted, we've kept it together all week. I used to joke that my son had to keep it together at daycare all week long, and he was a hot mess on Friday nights, let me tell you. The thing is that we're not really all that different from toddlers ourselves. We have those same feelings, especially in the primitive part of our brain. We get to the weekend and we're like, we want to relax. We want to enjoy our weekend. We want to have fun. And if you've been really good with your food choices, with riding your bike during the week, come the weekend, you might just be kind of overwhelmed by all of that, and you might just really want a break. And that's why weekend overeating is so very common. That's why it impacts so many of us. You are not alone if you are in this cycle of being good or thinking that you're being good during the week and then blowing it on the weekends. So many of us do this or have done this in the past. The problem is that it consistently makes us feel terrible to be in this cycle. And now we're just going to work on understanding the cycle a little bit better so that we don't feel stuck in it, so that we can get unstuck, and so that we can break this cycle. So this is why it happens, and this is kind of the root of overeating. You've been probably restricting all week, as we just kind of mentioned. You might not necessarily just be doing this with food, though. A lot of times we think about it with food in terms of being good during the week, but you also are likely restricting in your brain in terms of time. So you're probably thinking during the week, I don't have as much time. I have to be really careful about making sure that I'm eating well. I have to be careful about making sure that I get my rides in. So we have kind of physical and mental exhaustion and decision fatigue once we get to the weekend. Your brain is wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. So you are looking actually for freedom from that restriction that you've experienced all during the week with your schedule, with your food choices, with making sure that you're active. And by the time you get to the weekend, you feel like a break, as I mentioned. You feel like you need a reward. This is why this sort of thing happens. In fact, you might even be tempted to say that either Saturday or Sunday is a cheat day. I don't know if you've ever heard this term before. I've heard people use it a lot. In fact, there have been diets over the years that have encouraged people to have a cheat day. And while I really like the idea of not being so restrictive, I don't want it to be on just one day. You should not be super restrictive with your food choices, with the way that you are scheduling your rides and your workouts at any point in time, because restriction implies something that we don't want. It implies something that we don't like, and it puts us in this cycle of restricting, keeping everything tight. You can actually sometimes feel a tightening in your chest when you think about restriction versus just making decisions that make you and your body feel good every day. So that's why I am not a fan of cheat days. Why when someone tells me they're having a cheat day, I'll say, hey, we can just enjoy our food all the time. We don't have to have, just one day a week or just one day every once in a while where we enjoy our food. So this whole kind of cycle of, I'll just start over on Monday and cheat over the weekend gets us feeling much more tense than we really want to, and makes us that much more likely to not make the greatest decisions. You can make good decisions all of the time. You can enjoy your food all of the time. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. And again, we humans tend to think of things in terms of good or bad, black or white. And real sustainable weight loss is very much in the gray. In terms of a shift. So we've talked about what the problem is, and we've talked about why so many of us are in this cycle of eating a lot over the weekends, drinking a lot over the weekends, and the restricting during the week. So how do we break this cycle? What should we actually do about it? I am always saying to my son to bring us solutions, not problems. I've probably mentioned this before. He'll say, hey, Mom, I'm hungry. I'll say, that's nice. What are we going to do about it? What's your solution? Bring us a solution, not a problem. So I am big on bringing you solutions and not just discussing problems too. So how do we get out of this cycle? Well, first of all, and again, this is probably not going to surprise you, and if you've been here for a little bit, you may have heard this before, but you need to go into the weekend with a plan. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh my goodness, I just can't plan one more thing. And oh my goodness, I have been there. The decision fatigue is real. I am not talking about having a step-by-step plan for every single meal that you're going to be eating over the weekend. I am talking about having a loose idea of what your weekend events are going to be. Maybe you're going out to eat. Maybe you have a party. Maybe like me this weekend, you have 3 barbecues. Okay, what is your plan going to be? And ask yourself, what do I really want to enjoy? how do I want to feel at these events? Do I want to feel so full that I can't, that I'm sitting at the table and my tummy is upset? If that isn't how you want to feel, then it's important that in the lead up to the gathering, to the event, to going out to dinner with your husband, with your partner, with your friends, that you think about, okay, well, how am I going to want to feel? And what does that mean for the food choices that I'm going to make? I have an example of this. Friday night, I was at my brother's house and he made homemade fries. He made homemade hamburger buns. His wife, my sister-in-law, makes the best hamburgers, and I was so excited to enjoy one. Now, normally, when I plan my meals, when I plan my dinner, I will have either a bun or fries, but not both, because I know that having both does not feel great in my body. It feels really heavy, and I get over full pretty quickly. But I was at this moment, and I was like, you know what? I really just want to eat the fries. I really just want to eat the bun. I really want to eat the burger. And I don't really care if I don't feel great after. But I made the conscious choice and decision to do that. So that's what happened on Friday night. I definitely did overeat on Friday night. But in retrospect, I probably should have, eaten half the burger and taken the other half home, so I wasn't so full. Now, Saturday morning, when I woke up, did I beat myself up over it? No, absolutely not. I just said, hey, that didn't feel great. Maybe I want to avoid doing that tonight. And that was the end of it. I didn't make it this big dramatic thing or anything like that. I was just like, I had that experience. I learned from it, and now I'm moving on. So have a loose food and movement plan for your weekend. Think, okay, I'm going to have one drink with dinner, or I'm going to have 2 drinks when I'm out with friends. I'll, have a meal with a protein, with a dessert. Maybe I'll share my dessert with a friend or with my partner. Maybe I'll get in a light walk or some kind of movement every day. I don't have time for a full-blown bike ride this weekend. I most certainly didn't this past weekend. My weekend was really kind of back-to-back-to-back events. I didn't have time for a bike ride, but I did, prioritize swimming in the pool with my son and my husband and my mother-in-law and my father-in-law on Sunday. So what are some, basic ways that you can get some movement into your weekend? Also, I walked to my brother's house. Both of my brothers live on our street. We all live very close to each other. So when I went to those gatherings, I walked to those gatherings. That was a great way to get a little bit of extra movement in on days where I knew I didn't have a lot of time. That's what I want you to be kind of thinking about when you're thinking about, oh my gosh, the weekend's coming. What can I do? If you have a loose plan for both your movement and for your food, you are going to be in a position and in a place where you're just so much better able to handle it and able to deal with it. And I want you to be thinking about these weekend days in terms of food and movement the same way you think about your weekdays. That doesn't mean I want you to change the way I think about your weekends. That means I want you to change the way you think about your weekdays. Because if you're anything like me, you've been in the habit of restricting on weekdays, of having a more strict food plan on weekdays, of having a more strict movement plan on weekdays. And that, my friend, is really the problem. If you really want to break this cycle, it isn't the weekend that you need to address as much as the weekday, because you may not be getting what you need during your week. And you're going into the weekend stressed and just emotionally and physically exhausted, and you're not making the best choices. Maybe you haven't been fueling your body enough during the week, and that's why you blow it on the weekends. The same sort of thing happens with some of us during the day. If we aren't eating consistently throughout the day, by the time we get home from work or from school or from all of our activities, then we start overeating at that point. Sometimes it's really helpful to think of your week almost like a really long day and focus on trying to be consistent about your food choices and your movement choices, both during the week and on the weekends. I really hope that way of looking at your weekend and your weekday as kind of one and the same is going to help. Now, another thing that can be a little bit problematic is that our schedule on the weekends is usually different. And as a result of that, we have a really hard time seeing weekends and weekdays as separate. But if you stick to the basic ideas and principles of planning your meals, having an idea in advance of what you're going to eat. On Saturday, I was going to a picnic at my other brother's house on the street, and I knew that my mom's pasta, her meatballs, were going to be at that picnic. So I made a decision that I wasn't going to have burgers or hot dogs at that meal, that I was just going to have and enjoy the pasta with hopefully some salad before it. And there was a caprese salad. It was delicious. So I had the salad, I had the pasta, and then I stopped before I got overly full and overly gross. So that is what I mean by having a plan. Just have an intention. I did not intend to drink over this weekend. I was really focused on enjoying my time with family, enjoying my food, and it just wasn't a drinking time for me. I just enjoyed the family, enjoyed the food. I didn't feel like I needed alcohol to be a part of it this weekend, and so it wasn't. Again, no drama. I have no problem with anybody who did or did not drink over the weekend. I just chose that I didn't particularly feel like it or wanted to. I wanted to focus on the friends, the family, and the food this weekend, and that is exactly what I did. So come Monday, don't go over the top with restricting your food. Don't start punishing yourself if you ate too much. So if you did overeat this weekend, and as I mentioned, I certainly did on Friday night, you don't want to go into the week thinking, okay, well, I can't eat much this week. I have to make up for what I did over the weekend. I need to ride my bike 8,000 miles, and I need to eat carrots for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That is not a sustainable way to live your life. That is just going to make you feel awful. So think instead, I would encourage you to reflect on your weekend. Ask yourself, what worked this weekend in terms of my food, in terms of my movement? What didn't work? What could I possibly do differently next time? This reflection piece is so important. And this is the difference between losing your weight for the last time, for good, forever, and dieting. And this is why I hate diets. It's because they do not tell us anything other than to restrict. Dieting is always about restricting. It's always about counting calories. It's about counting carbs. It's about counting macros. It's about counting, making sure that you're in a calorie deficit. And that's just both boring and exhausting. And it isn't sustainable. The idea is you really want to be in the habit of testing and finding out what works for you and what doesn't. Overeating on Friday night did not work for me. I did not feel good after. And so instead of being like, oh, I got to ride my bike 100 miles, I instead said, you know what, next time I take half the burger home. Because I know that both burger with bun and fries, it doesn't feel good in my body. I tend to overeat it. So in the future, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick to my usual plan of burgers or fries. And if it's a situation where I'm looking at homemade fries and homemade burgers, burger buns that my brother made, then I'm just going to have a little bit less of everything. No drama, no fussing, no beating myself up. That's what I want you to be thinking about, and that's what I want you to be trying too. So just get curious, did you overeat? Did you eat past enough? Were you mindlessly eating? Were you just kind of grabbing food at a party off of a table without even thinking about it, without even asking yourself if you were hungry, if you had enough? So the idea is that when Monday rolls around, you just want to start again. You just want to be persistent with your weight loss, with your biking, with your wellness goals. It isn't about being perfect. It isn't about restriction. It's about starting again. We aren't always going to be perfect. We aren't always going to even be consistent. But what we can get really good at is being persistent. We can get really good at starting over and over and over again. Monday is a great day for a fresh start. Just be really, really clear on what a fresh start is and what a fresh start means to you. Okay? The more that you practice this, the easier it gets. The only difference, my friend, between someone who loses weight and someone who doesn't is that the person who loses weight doesn't give up. She stays persistent. She keeps trying. She reflects on what works, what doesn't, what feels good in her body, how good it feels to move her body and ride her bike, not because she's burning calories, but because she wants to feel good and she wants to feel strong. You do not need to earn your food. You do not need to punish yourself or your body if you overate. All you have to do is keep showing up with these small, doable steps. Keep reflecting. Be persistent. I know you can do this. Even if you don't know you can do it yourself, please know that I'm here. I believe in you. I'm rooting for you. I love you. And I absolutely know that if I could do this, the girl who loves Doritos and loves wine and loves food so, so much, then you, my friend, can absolutely do this too. Now, I would love to hear from you. You can DM me on Instagram at Sassy Cycling. That's SASCY Cycling. Or you can email me at stacy@sascy.com. Tell me your biggest weekend overeating struggle. What is it that you need help with right now? Or just tell me what helps you stay on track. What is your kind of tip or your trick that you always employ when Monday rolls around to get yourself kind of back into the swing of things, to be persistent, to start again? I would just love to hear from you. I have had such great conversations with my listeners, and I would love to have more. So I want you to be one of those. Please, please, please email me, DM me so that we can chat. And if you think of it, if you know that you have a friend that this message will resonate with, she doesn't need to even ride bikes. She just needs to know that restricting and kind of being in this cycle of restricting and overeating on the weekends and the weekdays is totally optional. Please, please, please share this message with her. It will help me so much to connect with more women who just want to meet their biking and wellness goals. So I would be so grateful to you, and she will be grateful as well. Thank you so much for being here, my friend. I hope you have a fantastic week. I can't wait to chat with you again. And until next time, ride on. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Biking Wellness Podcast. Be sure to head on over to sassy.com/guide, SASCY.com/guide, to get my completely free Lose Weight Biking Quick Start Guide so that you can get started with simple, doable weight loss today. That's SASCY.com/guide.